Hello and welcome everyone. I hope you're all doing well today. The name is Turtle, the Pokemon addicted VTuber. Look, I'm sure there are many of those already, but my particular addiction is VGC, competitive doubles. So to that end, I bought Pokemon Scarlet. I went through the entire campaign and made my very first team to tackle the ranked ladder with. I have a video where I go over the process that one can take to get Pokemon competitive ready. And if you like that sort of content, then rejoice, because I'll be doing more of that in the future. But what this video and what this series is going to do is chronicle my journey through ranked battles. I know that a lot of people have already made teams for competitive. I know that other people have already competed in tournaments for VGC. So I'm definitely not the first person to do this. But my grandfather always told me that slow and steady wins the race. He must have been a Trick Room player. I've gone ahead and made a team which you can see on screen right now. I've put it as a rental code, so you're free to try it if you so please. Aside from that, before the season ends, I will do a bit of a team summary where I explain all the various modes and synergies of the team, so please look forward to that as well. As I said, this series will be showcasing my journey through the ranked ladder, and the next few videos will focus on this particular team that I've made. In the future, I'll be making videos for different teams, or try out new ones, so please stay tuned for that as well. But for now, I just want to show off a few cool matches that I've had with this team, piling it in Scarlet and Violet ranked battles. I'll showcase some wins, and I'll showcase some losses, and hopefully provide fun and interesting commentary along the way. Alright, so this is the first game that I want to show off. We're playing against a Japanese player. We're still in beginner tier. We've had 5 games with 3 wins and 2 losses, so not amazing. But my opponent has a team here of Flareon, Sylveon, Weavile, Maushold, Drifblim, and Toxtricity. And my impression here is that my opponent probably has a support or disruption Pokemon like Weavile or Maushold to protect their Drifblim as they go for a speed control move such as Tailwind. And then you have a Pokemon like Flareon or Sylveon or Toxtricity especially in the back to sweep and nuke my side of the field. And so I recognize that, Kilowattrel to match the Drifblim speed and, to be super effective into it would be good. And that Arcanine actually has a really good defensive typing matchup against most of my opponent's team. It's good against the Flareon, it's good against the Sylveon, it's good against the Weavile. And then we have the Hydreigon and Gholdengo in the back to absorb the initial pressure and then push back, with superior speed in the end game, and then just wipe them out with Make It Rain or Dark Pulse or Snarls and that kind of thing. So that was the thinking that I had at the time. Let's see if it pans out. Let's see if it plays out the way that I expect. So we can see here my opponent does indeed lead Weavile and Drifblim. So I'm thinking, okay, this is going to be a fake out into Tailwind. And so my impression is that, if I can protect Kilowattrel and keep the focus hash up, that would be ideal. And if I can burn the Weavile, then I can ensure that the next turn, my Kilowattrel will be able to match the Tailwind and live. But unfortunately, my opponent's Weavile actually fakes out into the Arcanine. So it's a bit of a wasted turn from my end. And the Drifblim ends up using Trick Room. Not Tailwind, Trick Room. I'm completely gobsmacked here. So I recognize that Toxtricity and another Pokemon is going to be in the back. So I say, okay, look, at this point, I'm already behind. I just need some damage. If Kilowattrel goes down, Kilowattrel goes down. But if I can get some damage off and then neuter the Weavile with the Will-O-Wisp, that would probably be an ideal situation. My opponent uses Feint on Weavile and uses Explosion on the Drifblim. It doesn't do a lot of damage, but that's not the point. The reason why my opponent did this was to be able to enable his sweepers while Trick Room is still active, because the way that I would have played it is played very defensively and just, soak up all of my opponent's Trick Room turns and then ensure that I can KO the Drifblim, you know, when Trick Room ends, so that they don't get speed control for the rest of the game. That was my game plan, but by using Explosion, my opponent has sort of accelerated the game and gotten his sweeper onto the field without any risk. So here we have the Toxtricity. Now the Weavile is burned, so I don't, you know, I'm not hugely threatened by it, but I do need to soak up Trick Room turns. I briefly consider bringing in my Hydreigon, but look, my Kilowattrel, you know, still has half health. My Arcanine is still pretty bulky. So if we can just chip away, you know, into Toxtricity, then that would probably be ideal. Now, if I'd have Flare Blitzed into the Toxtricity, that might have been a better outcome, but I didn't know what my opponent was going to use and what item that he had. So I just used Extreme Speed in order to get guaranteed shit, right? So we can see here, he actually ends up using Boom Burst. Nearly KOs the Arcanine. But if he had Overdrive, he probably KOs the Arcanine, and that's what I was afraid of. You know, I didn't want to let my Arcanine go down, you know, without doing any damage in return, and so that's why I opted for Extreme Speed. So we see here Arcanine survives, eats the berry. My opponent actually uses Black Sludge as an item, not something like a Choice Spec. So I say, okay, my opponent's got special attackers, let's bring out the Hydreigon, and my opponent brings out the Sylveon. So this is a little bit of a tricky situation. However, my Hydreigon is Terra Poison type for situations like this in particular, where you have to deal with an opposing fairy Pokemon. So I say, okay, I need to Terastallize now. I hit the Sylveon with the Terra Blast now. You know, I don't know if it KOs, but, you know, I need to do as much damage as I can while I can. And then just use Gholdengo in the back to sweep. So we have Arcanine, use Protect for this turn. And the reason why I did that was just to ensure that Arcanine can, you know, stay on the field for a little bit longer and then chip away at the Toxtricity or the Sylveon next turn. So my opponent uses Terra, you know, Terastallization, but it's a Ghost Terastallization. I say, Ghost? Not Fairy, not Steel? What's going on here? What's my opponent thinking of doing? And this part's the cool part. This part's really, really cool, actually. So Arcanine uses Protect, playing a bit defensively, soaking up turns. And so we can see my opponent, his Toxtricity uses Boom Burst. You know, and, you know, he did that last turn. But Boom Burst, because my opponent's Sylveon is now a Ghost type, Boom Burst doesn't affect it. And it uses Copycat, so it repeats the Boom Burst used by the Toxtricity. This is so, so cool because Sylveon has the ability Pixelate. So it actually turns that normal type Boom Burst into a fairy type Boom Burst, allowing it to deal even more damage. That was such a cool moment. I was really, really impressed with this strategy. So we can see here that, you know, my Terra Blast, because Sylveon turned into a Ghost type, my Terra Blast didn't do all that much. So I say, okay, if my Hydreigon can live until the end of this turn, then using a Snarl to reduce both my opponent's special attack will go a long way in winning me this game. However, you know, even if that doesn't happen, the ideal would just be to go ahead and Extreme Speed and try and KO the Toxtricity if possible. And my Arcanine almost gets there. We get a critical hit as well. Unfortunately, no KO. Unfortunately, no KO. So my opponent has the Overdrive, and now the Sylveon uses the Copycat. And so it does another Overdrive, taking out my Hydreigon, which is a little unfortunate. A little unfortunate. But, you know, one positive out of all of this is that Trick Room has ended. And I actually do have a pretty powerful Pokemon that I can use in the endgame, which is Gholdengo. And so I said to myself, look, my opponent's been spamming Copycat, so I wonder if they're actually choice locked. And so I consider using a Shadow Ball into the Sylveon, but I didn't want to risk it. You know, you don't want to risk Sylveon surviving and then KOing me after. So I use Make It Rain to KO the Toxtricity specifically, because if the Sylveon is indeed choice locked, then they'll use Copycat, which will turn into Make It Rain, which will not KO my Gholdengo. And Sylveon does exactly that. Using Making It Rain onto the Gholdengo doesn't do a lot of damage. And it does reduce their special attack. And I said, oh my god, I was right. This Sylveon is choice specs. They're locked into Copycat. So I protect just to test. Just to test. Maybe Sylveon is not locked and they have another move. Just to test. We can see here, they use Copycat again. So I say, okay, I've got this in the bag. I wasn't 100% sure if Shadow Ball KO'd. If I had my time again, I would use Shadow Ball here 100% of the time. But I used Nasty Plot, assuming that my opponent would just Copycat that. And they do. So they use Nasty Plot, they boost back up their special attack, but it doesn't matter because I can just Shadow Ball the next turn. And so I go ahead, I Shadow Ball into the Sylveon, and it hits, it connects, and it KOs. It KOs. Sylveon has a pretty massive special defense stat, so I was a bit worried the previous turn whether Shadow Ball would KO or not. But this turn, when my Gholdengo was +1, it definitely KO'd. So we did really well there. And that was a cool team to face up against. So I wanted to showcase this game just because, this particular strat and synergy between the different Pokemon that my opponent used was not something that I've seen so far. And it was really cool because in order to make their strategy work, they actually utilized the new Terra mechanic. I thought that was cool. It's probably not a consistent team, but it was a cool team. And I'd love to see more of it if I'm being completely honest. And with that, we went ahead and advanced to Pokeball tier, which was also quite nice. Alright, so we're back, and we've actually gotten ourselves on a little bit of a win streak, which is quite nice. We're up to Great Ball 9 right now, 17 battles, 14 wins, 3 losses, and we are up against one of the most popular rental codes, at least at the time, a very meta team. Murkrow, Hydreigon, Garchomp, Arcanine, Breloom, and Gholdengo. Now, you can see that I share basically more than half the team with my opponent. The only real differences is that I have a Kilowattrel instead of a Murkrow, and I have a Garganacle instead of a Breloom. But I am wondering, what should I actually try and do to get ahead of my opposition this time around? And I recognize that Garganacle in the endgame is actually quite strong if I can get rid of the Gholdengo early, if they have a Gholdengo. And, Garganacle is a decent endgame to work towards, but Kilowattrel and Garchomp is probably the ideal early game, to work with. And so from there, I'm not 100% sure what my last Pokemon should be. And the reason why I think Kilowattrel and Garchomp are a good opening or a good lead is simply because, Garchomp is pretty quick, Kilowattrel provides good speed control, and, we'll see what my opponent does, but I feel like I have the tools to beat it, because Kilowattrel has a good matchup into the Murkrow, for example, and I can probably live the mirror matchup against an opposing Garchomp and outspeed an opposing Hydreigon. So my opponent starts with Breloom and Murkrow, and so here I'm not 100% on what I should do. I actually think here about air slashing the Breloom, but I'm fairly certain that it's Focus Sash, so there's kind of no point. So what I actually do is I go with Discharge to get some chip onto the Murkrow, as well as to break the Focus Sash. And I say, okay, I could go out into Garganacle because I expect a Spore out in that slot, but I'll probably just Discharge turn 1, and then I'll go ahead and protect turn 2, and we'll see how we go from there. Because I can save my Garganacle for the next turn, We protect. The opponent uses Tailwind, not a surprise. And as I predict, they actually go ahead and Spore into the Garchomp, because the my Garchomp, under Tailwind is a really, really big threat. So I go ahead and use Discharge, and then we get the spread damage onto the opposing team. The Murkrow takes about half, and, the Breloom takes a little bit, but the main thing is that it breaks Focus Sash. And we can see it actually got paralyzed there, which was very, very good for me, because it means that my Kilowattrel outspeeds 100%. So I can freely go into an Air Slash, and then I can bring out, I can bring out my Garganacl, because Garganacl has a pretty strong matchup into the Murkrow. So we see what my opponent does here, and they use the Foul Play to break my Kilowattrel Sash, and we have Air Slash into the Breloom, taking it out instantly. So I feel like that's not a bad turn. I could have actually stayed in with the Garchomp to apply more pressure, but I recognize that I don't yet have Tailwind. So when my opponent comes in with another Pokemon, I want to preserve that Garchomp for the endgame. And we can see that they come out with the Hydreigon, and I say, okay, what should I do here? Like my thinking is that I'm probably gonna eat like a Draco Meteor into the Kilowattrel slot, or maybe like a Dark Pulse. So I'm going to protect the Kilowattrel because they want to deny me speed control, right? Because my Kilowattrel has the Tailwind. So I'm going to protect Kilowattrel and then use Salt Cure into the Murkrow. And the idea is to remove Murkrow off the field before they're able to get Tailwind up. Before they're able to reapply Tailwind the next time around. Because my Inkling, so the Murkrow uses Taunt on my Garganacl. I wasn't looking to use like I wasn't using to look a status move. My goal was just to remove the Murkrow from the field so that my Kilowattrel can, in fact, use Tailwind later on. We get, the hit out on Murkrow, and it's going to be Salt Cured. And we can see that it doesn't tick it down, but I actually think this is a good thing. This is a good thing. This is good for me. We're able to block the Draco Meteor as well coming in from the Hydreigon. So I think I'm in a pretty good spot. We can go ahead and Salt Cure. We can go ahead and Salt Cure the Hydreigon, just get it chipping away. And we need to protect the Kilowattrel in order to get speed control for the endgame. That was my thinking here. And so I say, okay, the Hydreigon, it can hit the Arcanine, but it probably won't KO. Maybe it will, but it probably won't. And the Murkrow is not really doing a whole lot there. So we can go ahead and sort of like punish that. Because I don't think the Draco Meteor could one-hit my Garganacl. But unfortunately for me, they do crit on their, Draco Meteor. And unfortunately for me, my Arcanine goes down in one hit. I don't know if they needed that. It's possible that they could have just one-shot anyway. But this turn was important because his Murkrow goes down to the Salt Cure without being able to reapply speed control. So we can see there, I get the Foul Play. It doesn't do much damage. The Hydreigon starts to tick down as a result of my Salt Cure, and the Salt Cure ticks down on the Murkrow as well, completing that KO. This is actually very, very important from my end. Because their Tailwind peters out. And so what I can do here is I can bring in Kilowattrel. And I can freely get up Tailwind on my own, because my opponent doesn't have anything that outspeeds the Kilowattrel. So I say, okay, look, this is a free Tailwind. I need the speed control for the future turns. Now, unfortunately for me, I'm in a little bit of a pickle with Garganacl. I'm going to have to, survive the turn. And I consider, okay, do I want to Terra here? Or do I just want to, eat whatever hit that my opponent will have? And I didn't want to suffer from the Earthquake, from the Garchomp, and I wasn't expecting my opponent to Terra Blast into the Garganacl slot. So I say, okay, I'm going to Terra Grass Garganacl to live the Garchomp's hits, and then tick away at it with Salt Cure and get Tailwind up with my Kilowattrel, because there's a high chance that they're going to try and target down the Kilowattrel. So I say, okay, I have the Grass Terra up, and we can go ahead and Salt Cure. The reason why I don't protect on Garganacl is because I'm still taunted for another turn, by the way. And then my opponent uses Swords Dance, gets the Garchomp up. So that's a bit scary, because he recognizes that, the Garganacl doesn't really have a strong way to pressure. So, he uses up the Draco Meteor into the Kilowattrel slot, takes it out. I don't mind this, because my opponent is now, the Hydreigon is now at -4, right? I have speed control up, I have my Garchomp. At -4, Draco Meteor should not be able to KO. My my Garchomp, because I actually have a bulky Garchomp, and I say, okay, look, you know, I have a relatively free win over here, and so here's my mistake, right? Here's my mistake. I consciously say to myself, look, you know, I understand that right now their Garchomp could easily protect and then try and hit me with their Hydreigon, but I have 3 turns of Tailwind. So I'm going to keep their Garchomp honest and hit them with the Dragon Claw, and then I'm going to chip away at the Hydreigon with another Salt Cure. So that's the, you know, that's the mindset that I had, but we'll see how it plays out. You know, because there are +2 Garchomp, so I have to keep them honest. I know that there's a high chance they are going to protect and then hit my Garchomp with their Hydreigon, but I have to keep them honest because they're +2, you know? So I hit into that, and then we'll see what happens. Alright? So the Hydreigon uses Draco Meteor into my Garchomp as expected, and he KOs. Why? He gets another crit! He gets another crit, and so the Hydreigon is now at -6, but if you crit an opponent, then your attack drops, you know, are nullified. So they got big damage. I got a crit in return, but I would argue that their crit was much, much more important than mine, right? Because if I had called my opponent's Garchomp's protect, and then I let my Garchomp get down at the end of the turn, there's a possibility that I lose here, right? And so I wanted to like play it as safe as possible and keep my opponent honest, but I got punished for it, thanks to a crit. And so I say, okay, what I can do now is just recover, right? Because my opponent's probably just gonna keep spamming Draco Meteor into me. It's not gonna do much damage, but I'll just go ahead and recover it up and try and stall out my 2 opponents, because we have a Garchomp and then a Hydreigon, and we can see that they're both ticking away from Salt Cure now. Hydreigon's going to go down the next turn, and I don't think I've revealed Protect yet. Yeah, I've used 1 Recover, and so my opponent might think that I am using a Body Press set which doesn't have Protect. So I use Protect, I bat out the Dragon Claw, my opponent, bam, Dragon Claw time, and then uses another Draco Meteor on the Hydreigon, and that's just to ensure that, you know, I don't get hurt this turn. As a result of that, you know, my opponent ticks away for another turn. So we'll see how we go with this. Right, so now we've turned this from a 2v1 to a 1v1. You know, we were able to tick away the Hydreigon using the Garganacle, and now can we last against a +2 Garchomp? Let's see. And I say, okay, look, they're either gonna whack me, or, you know, they're either gonna whack me, or they're gonna use another Swords Dance and set up and say, okay, I need to know how much damage they're gonna do to me. So, you know, we'll see what they do, and we'll see how much damage it does to me, and we'll try and work from there, because I still have several turns left, right, before the Salt Cure can actually tick out the Garchomp. So I need to stay alive, right? I need to stay alive. And I'm thinking, in my head, okay, let's see if we can stall. And then I just recover, right? I just recover. Let's see what my opponent ends up doing. They use the Dragon Claw, and then they see that, you know, they still need a lot more in order to take out the Garganacl. So my opponent, I think, is +4 with Swords Dance right now. And so a +4 Dragon Claw does not take out the Garganacl. And I say, okay, look, this is like the most predictable turn in the world, you know? So I can't have a situation where my opponent can crit me, or my opponent, like, I know that my opponent's going to set up again. They're going to use another Swords Dance and call me out on this, right? They're going to call me out. So I'm considering whether I should Salt Cure, Protect, or Recover here. So we'll see what happens. And I'm thinking, look, I probably have 3 turns, so I'll recover this turn. because I expect them to Swords Dance, right? So, they Swords Dance there. And then now they're +6. Now they're +6. So this time I make the read, I make the call. I say, look, you're going to Swords Dance this turn. So we have to survive one Dragon Claw. So I'm going to protect this turn. And then I say, okay, look, I might as well just protect this turn. And then we'll see how we end up, right? Because my opponent's either going to Dragon Claw or just use another Swords Dance to waste my PP. So he uses Swords Dance again, but look, his attack won't go any higher. This is a maximum boosted Garchomp, and then look how much HP he has, right? Oh, she has. Look, this is the final turn. So either I live a +6 Dragon Claw or I don't. Dragon Claw comes out. Bam! We live! We live on 14 HP. Garganacle is thick. He's dummy thick. And then we hit him back with the Salt Claw. It wasn't 100% necessary, but we hit him with the Salt Claw and he finally ticks out. He ticks out. So the Garganacle endgame worked out exactly as I had hoped. He tanked a +6 Dragon Claw. Amazing, amazing outcome. I'm so happy with that. That was fantastic. That was an absolute. I was so hyped there. Not just for winning the battle, but I was actually on a hot winning streak as a result of this particular battle. And in my head, I think this was the battle that got me to Ultra Ball. So I was very, very happy with that outcome. And this was the battle where I really became a believer in Garganacle. We got to Ultra Ball, we're on one hell of a winning streak, and we did a fantastic job, playing to our outs with the Garganacle endgame, which is something that I did call out at the very start of the game when we were doing a team analysis. So, there you go. There we go. And that's it for the games today. I want to thank everybody for watching, especially if you made it to the end of the video. If you enjoyed the content, please leave a like or a comment or subscribe for more Pokemon or VTuber content in the future. I'll be doing more VGC videos of this vein, but I also do other types of videos here as well. Take a look at my stream archive, for example. I also make various skits, musical and comedic, as well as have a bunch of model kit and hand cam videos on the channel as well. I know I'm a bit sporadic with my uploads and my Twitch stream, so look, from Turtle to you, thank you, and take care of yourselves, and I hope to see you all next time.